Hey man, I'm not really the type to share these things, but I need to tell you what happened to me at that Airbnb. It was too freaky to keep to myself. I just wanted to take a break from life, you know? I was really stressed, tired of everything, broke up with my girlfriend, and even had a big fight with my parents. I was really at rock bottom, doing really badly in college, and I thought a weekend in an isolated country house would be perfect to disconnect from the world. Well, little did I know that what awaited me there was far from peace and tranquility. It all started on a Friday afternoon. It felt like everyone had decided to throw their responsibilities on me, so I thought, why not disappear for a few days? I looked for an Airbnb far from the city, a simple little country house, right in the middle of nowhere. The reviews were great. Everyone talked about how calm and perfect the place was for relaxing. As soon as I arrived, I found the place beautiful. Those green hills, a lake in the distance, no sign of civilization nearby. I thought, this is it, finally some well-deserved rest. The first day was great. I took a walk around the lake, took some cool photos of the landscape, and ended the day sitting on the porch. The peace I wanted was there. When night came, I made a quick meal and went to the couch to watch a movie. Around midnight, I started hearing some strange noises. At first, it was footsteps. I thought it could be some forest animal, so I ignored it and kept watching the movie. But the footsteps continued, and it seemed like they were getting closer to the house. I got up from the couch and went to the window to take a look, but I didn't see anything. I went back to the couch, and that's when I heard a light knock at the door. When I opened it, I found an older man with a friendly smile on his face. He introduced himself as the neighbor. Honestly, after all this, I don't even remember his name, if it was even his real name, and said he lived in a cabin further into the woods and had seen lights in the house, so he came to check if everything was okay. He seemed nice, and we chatted for a few minutes on the porch. He mentioned that he had lived there for years and loved the tranquility of the place. I thanked him for coming, and he said goodbye, heading back to his cabin. I closed the door, and as I turned to go back to the living room, I heard a noise coming from upstairs. It sounded like someone was dragging a piece of furniture. A shiver ran down my entire body. I was alone. There was no reason for any furniture to be moving. I decided to go up the stairs slowly, each step creaking in a way that seemed to amplify my fear. In the hallway upstairs, everything was dark and silent. There was only one room there, and I hadn't even entered it when I arrived. The door was slightly open. I pushed it gently, trying not to make any noise. The room was empty, but the air in there was colder than in the rest of the house. Something was wrong. I could feel it. And that's when I saw it. On the window of the room, there were handprints, as if someone had pressed their palms against the glass. The problem? The marks were on the inside. My heart started racing, and all I could think about was getting out of there as quickly as possible. At that moment, I heard footsteps downstairs. I ran to the top of the stairs and saw the man who had introduced himself as the neighbor now inside my house. He saw me, looking at me with a very serious face, and holding something in his hand that I couldn't identify, and started running up the stairs quickly. My instinct told me to run. Without thinking twice, I ran to the room and jumped out the window, landing on the ground outside. I felt pain shoot through my legs, but I couldn't stop. I ran through the woods, my heart pounding, feeling branches scratching my arms as I pushed forward. I could hear the footsteps behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I just kept running as fast as I could until I saw the city lights in the distance. A feeling of relief washed over me as I got closer to safety. I finally reached the city, breathless and panicked, but relieved to be far from that house and that man. I'll never know what that guy wanted, but one thing is for sure, I'm never going back to an isolated place like that again. I desperately needed a break. The exhausting routine as a single mother of two boys, Lucas, 8, and Pedro, 5, was becoming unsustainable. Between work, household chores, and daily responsibilities, I found myself exhausted, out of breath, and with a growing feeling that I needed a change. That's when I decided to do something different. I looked for an Airbnb in a remote area, surrounded by nature. That's when I found a house in a farming region. It was perfect. I wanted to give my kids the experience of connecting with the environment and animals while escaping the pressure of the city. The house was in a mountainous region, at the end of a dirt road that seemed endless. When we arrived, the wooden cabin looked cozy, with farms around, some animals in pens and chicken coops, a perfect retreat. The kids were excited, running around and exploring every corner of the place. I felt happy to see the boys so enthusiastic. It seemed like the decision to leave the city for a while had been the right one. It was already late afternoon, and we decided to take a walk along the trail near the house. The sun was setting behind the trees, creating an orange glow that made everything even more beautiful. That first night, I made a simple meal for us, and after dinner, we settled in the living room to watch a movie. With the wind blowing against the windows and the fireplace warming the room, the atmosphere was peaceful and cozy. The boys soon fell asleep, and I took them to the room they shared. I felt a calm that I hadn't experienced in a long time. When I finally lay down, I thought about how that place could be the refuge I needed. But the calm didn't last long. In the middle of the night, a storm started to fall. The wind, which had been gentle before, was now shaking the house's walls slightly, making the windows tremble. The sound of rain pounding on the roof intensified, and the thunder began to echo, getting closer and closer. Lightning illuminated the room for fractions of a second, creating scary shadows on the walls. I sat up in bed, trying to steady my breathing. Then, a strange sound mixed in with the storm. It was the chickens in a nearby coop. They must have been very frightened. I could also hear horses and cows making a lot of noise a bit further away. Amid all those noises, I heard something else that caught my curiosity. Footsteps in the mud outside, as if someone was running back and forth. But since the steps were very heavy and rhythmic, I assumed it was a horse, scared and looking for shelter. The noises were so loud that I couldn't resist. I had to look and see what was happening. There was no way I could sleep. I got up slowly, trying not to make any noise to avoid waking the boys, and went to the window. Outside, everything was dark, and a shiver ran down my spine. I took my phone and turned on the flashlight, walking towards the kitchen, where I could get a better view of the backyard. As I approached the glass door, I heard an even more disturbing sound. Something heavy, moving slowly, as if it was stepping on the wet ground near a chicken coop belonging to a neighbor who lived a few meters away. The rain was falling heavily, and the thunder made the ground shake. I tried to light up the yard with the flashlight, but the light seemed too weak against the darkness of the storm. Suddenly, lightning lit up the yard, and that's when I saw it. There was something out there, a large creature, covered in fur, moving around the chicken coop. I couldn't see details, but the sight of it was enough to make my heart race. The creature seemed to be sniffing the chickens, which were clucking desperately. I froze, unable to believe what I was seeing. It wasn't a common animal, not in that region. Fear took over me, and my instinct screamed for me to protect my children. I backed away slowly, trying not to make any noise. I returned to the hallway and ran to the boys' room. I entered their room and closed the door slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. I approached their beds and stood beside them, watching my children sleep, innocent and unaware of what was happening outside. The sound of the rain and thunder was still strong, but from time to time, I could hear that horrible sound of something being dragged and the desperate clucking of the chickens. My heart was beating so fast that I could barely breathe. With every noise that came from outside, my body froze. Then I heard an even more disturbing sound. Heavy footsteps approaching the house. I imagined the creature was coming in our direction. The wooden floor of the room seemed to vibrate slightly with the steps, and for a moment I thought my heart would stop. I crouched beside the boy's bed, trying to hide in the darkness of the room. Then, through a flash of lightning, I saw the shadow of the creature passing by the window. It was huge, and the fur-covered silhouette made it look like a materialized nightmare. I held back from screaming. Tears of fear began to run down my face, as all I could think about was protecting my children. Fortunately, the creature seemed not to notice us, and after a few minutes that felt like hours, the sound of the footsteps began to move away, returning in the direction of the chicken coop. The night was long. I stayed there beside my children, unable to sleep. Every thunder, every sound from outside kept me on high alert, ready to act if anything happened. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sky began to clear and the storm started to subside. I knew I needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. When the sun rose, I got up slowly, trying not to wake the boys. I peeked out the window, and what I saw left me in shock. The yard was covered in mud, and there were chicken carcasses scattered everywhere, feathers and blood mixed into the muddy ground. It was a scene of horror, and my stomach churned. I couldn't let Lucas and Pedro see that. I took them to the car. I did my best to keep them distracted as we passed through the yard, avoiding letting them see the horrible scene that was there. I got in the car, started the engine, and began driving away from that house. My only thought was to get my children to safety and get as far away from that nightmare as possible.